God be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Holy One, we give you thanks for gathering us together in your name. We give you thanks for the wonderful music, all the preparations that went into our celebration today. Most of all, we give you thanks for these 65 years of ministry here at St. Anselms. Thank you for the faithful witness in this place. Thank you for all the generations that have looked to you and found you here. Thank you for all those yet to come who need to hear the good news that is coming from this place. We ask you to bless the vestry, to bless Will and Matt and all those who are engaged in ministry here. We ask you to be among us today and carry us forward in your mission for the world as we hear the history of all those who have helped us get to this place where we are today and give thanks for their ministries. We ask this all in Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
The meal is family style, so feel free to pick up the plates and pass them around.
Some of you may have figured out that I'm a bit of a church nerd in the sense that I really love digging through filing cabinets in churches and finding out really cool stuff about places. And one of the things that I found this actually month, or was it, yes, this month, was a letter from Bishop James Pike from California to Olav Hammerstrom, the architect in Wellfleet, saying that this is going to be one of the most outstanding churches in the world when completed. So we have, I hope that's not a bit like that tax collector, but we're going to be out, we're a bit like the fair, yes. But today we're going to toast ourselves a little bit, humbly, and I want to speak, the first person is aptly someone who will tell you about his story and his long relationship with our church, but he's one of our quieter members, but he's one of the most hardworking and humble of our members, and someone that I quickly recognized for the many gifts and time, of energy, and care that he's given to this parish over the years. So, Chris Young, you are invited to come up here and toast this place.
Okay, can everybody hear me? I hear myself. So, yeah, my journey with this church actually goes back before the church was actually built. So, my mother decided she wanted to go to church and take us kids with her. This is back in the late 50s when there was a St. Anselms, but it wasn't a physical place like this. We met at the Park Theater, we met in a mortuary, we met at all different places around town. We had Sunday school at the Masonic Temple, the basement of the town hall. I wrote notes here, but anyway, lots of different places. dentist office, I remember that. And then in 1959, my mom, we lived just around the corner on Lost Palace, about 2 blocks away. So we marched up here, and there was a house behind the church here. That was the original rectory. There was a chapel in the garage. My mom marched us up here, and we were all baptized in 59. And then, of course, the church was being built at that time, and then I was asked to be an acolyte. I did that all through my junior high and high school years. The church hasn't really changed a whole lot. I was fascinated with the fact that they did the sermon, up front where they put the lectern up there. The original pulpit was just behind that, and you had to step up 2 places, and it was like a little chariot up there. And that's where they did the preaching from. And as an acolyte, we used to have to stand in front of that very nicely like this and count everybody that got communion. So that was one of our jobs. There was always 2 of us. We got to march in and march out, and there was a lot of us here at the time. A lot of fun, young families. Dave Bozarth, is Jean here? Her son was an acolyte with us. I can tell you more and more stories about things that happened. I used to get up early in the morning, and I'd cut through my backyard and our neighbor's backyard to get to here. And when I forgot one time it was muddy, so I came in my shoes were all coated with mud. I digress. I was baptized here by Bishop Pike in the early 60s. I also received my God and Country Award for Boy Scouts through the church as well. I could spend a lot of time. I was told I had 2 minutes. I probably already over. But I've been coming here. My 3 children were baptized here. 2 of my grandchildren have been baptized here. And it's always a place of comfort for me. I used to come up here. The doors were never locked. I used to come up here in the evening times when I needed to do some thinking. And I could always walk into church and just sit down and think about things. So, it means a lot to me. I'm starting to get a little teary-eyed. I'm sorry. I'm glad to still be here, to do whatever I can to help. I've done several different jobs and different things, but here's to the early years of the church, 50s and 60s. Cheers. Yes, to St. Anselms.
So next up were these kind of surprise characters that got mentioned in today's sermon. I was delighted that when I came to Wellfleet, I was curious to meet some people that were connected with St. James, and I was thrilled to know that Tracy had connected with Tim, and then Tim took me out to a beautiful lunch, and it was wonderful to hear about his dad. And I invite Tim and his sister Jane to come up and tell us more about St. Anselm's second vicar, Stanley Smith.
Say good morning, good afternoon, welcome. My name is Stanley Smith Jr. Our father was Stanley Smith, one of the first vicars here at this church. My wife and I, right there, my beautiful wife and I live in Marblehead, Mass, but also have a summer home on the Cape. I would like to extend my appreciation to the Right Reverend Rios, the Very Reverend Lynn, she doesn't like when I get so formal, the Reverend Will Scott, and other distinguished clergy members in attendance, and to the entire St. Anselm's community. I cannot thank you enough for making us feel so welcome and warm. Thank you so much for your welcoming us back to your beautiful church. It is truly a pleasure to be here today, accompanied by my sister Jane, my wife Elizabeth, my brother-in-law Peter, Jane and Peter's daughter-in-law Kate, Kate's friend Ben, and finally, beautiful Ayla, who's 7 years old, and their granddaughter. Together we're representing our family and are honored to share our version of the early beginnings of St. Anselm's Church. Our mother, Joyce, would have loved to attend this special occasion. However, at 96 years old, traveling has become more difficult for her. She sends her heartfelt thanks, her heartfelt congratulations and best wishes to St. Anselms on its 65th anniversary. Before I begin, I must clarify that my recollection of St. Anselm's early history may be a bit unclear, as I was only 1 year old at the time of its founding. So I'll leave the early history version to my sister Jane. I want to emphasize how special it is to be here today. As has mentioned several times during the celebration, St. Anselms shares a remarkable history with its older sister, St. James the Fisherman. I truly believe there is a calling why Will called or emailed Tracy, and then shortly after I emailed Tracy, and I truly believe in the divine and that it was my Father speaking to us. It's time to get back involved, time to get reacquainted on both churches, and to really close the circle and come back to St. Anselms for its 65th. While these two Episcopal parishes are separated by approximately 3,164 miles? 78. I just have 3,000, so. And belong to two different dioceses. They're connected through two beautiful and nearly identical buildings situated gracefully on top of a beautiful hill. Both churches share the same architect, Olaf Hammerstrom, as we've heard, and were guided by a common vision set forth by the Right Reverend Pike, the Right Reverend Coburn of Massachusetts. I did not know about the third, but I am sure there are many others. Bishop Coburn is my brother's godfather, and Bishop Arnold was my godfather. It is truly remarkable that these communities of St. James the Fisherman and St. Anselms have so much in common. Even though they are separated by the two coasts, the similarities between the two churches extends beyond the buildings and congregations. For example, Guglielmo's Marchione's first transatlantic wire station was established in Wellfleet, Massachusetts, and San Francisco ultimately became the Pacific hub for the same Marconi network. This summer, we were fortunate to hear the sermon from Reverend Scott in Wellfleet, Massachusetts, and what an unbelievable minister you have. And today we have heard from our very own Tracy Lynn. It dawns on me that this family is now one of the few remaining connections that link both communities, although I'm thrilled to hear there were others that also share that common vision. I want to warmly invite you to visit St. James the Fisherman and experience its welcoming community as you have done for our family. Thank you so much, turn the page, of having us back to your beautiful church. It means so much to our entire family. Now it's my pleasure to introduce my sister, Jane Hamill.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Thank you for the lovely invitation. And it's so wonderful to meet you and see you again, Tracy. Lovely to be here. I'm actually a little overwhelmed, more overwhelmed than I thought I would be. I was 12 years old when we moved cross country from Michigan. And I thought, oh, this is not going to be too difficult. But I came through here. Will said to me, has it changed a lot? And I said, no, it really feels so familiar to me. It feels just as it did back in 1962. So it's just such a pleasure to be here. And Chris, I'm kind of thinking we might have known each other at that point. We must have crossed paths at some point, you know. So my relationship with St. Anselms truly was pretty short, but very deep. And I have so many fond memories that I can share with you, but I have to kind of share just a few of them with you. It was in the late 1950s and early 1960s that we were living in Royal Oak, Michigan, and our father, Stanley Smith, was a minister at St. Margaret's Episcopal Church in Hazel Park, Michigan. The architect, Olaf Hammerstrom, you've heard his name today, who designed St. Anselms and St. James the Fisherman in Wellfleet, was actually living in a neighboring town of ours close by in Bloomfield, Michigan. So we had the honor of being invited to his home. And I was probably 9 or 10 at the time. But even at that point, I was awestruck by the simplicity of the architecture of his home and the simple furnishings. His wife, Mary Ann Stengel, was a world-renowned weaver and textile designer. And again, I was enthralled by some of the exhibitions that they had. I shouldn't say exhibitions, they were their home decorations in their home, and they were absolutely gorgeous, and I was mesmerized by the color. And also mesmerized by the folks themselves, because they were so welcoming to us. During the summer of 1959, my family and I spent several weeks at our ancestral home in Orleans, Cape Cod. On Sundays, we attended St. James the Fisherman, where Daddy was a frequent guest minister. I met Bishop Pike during that summer, and he came to dinner a number of times, actually. And from what I understand, my memory is vague, but I do remember the conversations being quite lively and animated, which makes sense considering Bishop Pike's colorful history and wonderful history. It was probably during one of those meetings with Bishop Pike and Daddy's connection with Olaf Hammerstrom, the architect, and his relationship with St. James the Fisherman that led to Daddy's acceptance of the ministerial position here at St. Anselms Church. So in the summer of 1962, my family and I packed up. I shouldn't say I packed up, I didn't pack anything, but I did drive across country with them, and it was quite an adventure just getting here. And of course, arriving at 12 years old, it was a huge adventure. I have lots of wonderful memories of St. Anselms, and as a child, you have very visual memory, at least I did. I remember, I know the hall was different here, but I remember making wreaths and having art projects and doing those kinds of things here. I also remember hiding under the altar once because I think I got really mad at my mother and ran away behind the altar. So I felt very safe here, obviously, at St. Anselms. But there is one experience that particularly stands out for me, and that was, I was 13 years old, and I was attending the confirmation classes that Daddy was obviously overseeing. And being the minister's daughter, I really wanted to make sure that I knew all my prayers really well, and I practiced and practiced. During that time, however, a boy at Fairview not middle school, it was Fairview Junior High School here in Lafayette, tripped me in the hallway, and I fell on my right knee, and my knee was broken as a result. So because of that, I had to wear a cast from my hip to my ankle. And I got very nervous about this because I knew in practicing all my confirmation classes that during the ceremony, all those who were going to be confirmed were to kneel. And all those that were being blessed at the altar were to stand. So I made very clear to my father, I had a conversation with him, I said, Daddy, I want to be sure that I get confirmed by Bishop Pike. Oh, no worries, I'll tell him that you've got a broken knee, that you, okay, he assured me. So the day came, of course, confirmation, I'm in my white dress, all excited, and I'm not really sure what happened, but there must have been some kind of miscommunication with Bishop Pike and my dear dad. Maybe there was no conversation, I have no idea. I didn't fess up anyway. But here I was standing in the cast, of course, because I couldn't kneel. Bishop Pike blesses me and walks on. Well, at 13 years old, I worked so hard at all those prayers, I was near tears. I was just so heartbroken. Daddy, luckily, was coming close behind. I pulled on his vestments and I whispered in his ear, I did not get confirmed. And so he was able to bring Bishop Pike back, pulled him back, and I did indeed get confirmed. But it was too much of my embarrassment, you know. But that's one of my favorite memories here, and many more. But it's wonderful to be here today and to share this beautiful, beautiful celebration with you all, and to meet so many lovely people. And anybody 1962 was around then when I was here, I'd love to meet with you. So thank you. It's been a privilege for being here. Thank you so much.
Okay, next up. So
So we're in a time machine now. We're making it to the 1970s, and I want to ask Gary and Wynn Bacon, shall we bring the microphone to you? Would that be better? Okay.
Gentlemen, we keep here. I'm so happy to have been here all these wonderful years, and St. Anselms is so precious to us. And our Reverend Will Scott is wonderful, and we are so lucky. He is the answer to our prayers. And speaking of the answer to our prayers, St. Anselms was the answer to my prayers when we moved here, because our children want to go to Sunday school, and Gary and I went around to the various churches, and we were looking for a place for our kids to go to Sunday school. Our girls were 2 and 4, and we found St. Anselms. I opened the door to the parish hall, and I looked, and I saw about 40 or 50, I'm not kidding, that many children sitting in rows waiting for a junior service that they were going to have while the adults had the service in the church. And when I saw the sight, I said, this is the answer to my prayers. My girls were just so excited. And they let Shelley, who was almost 3, come to Sunday school, even though we were supposed to be 3. So she was overjoyed. I love teaching Sunday school, and we had a confirmation class when our people got to be that age. And Sally Fisher and I believe it was Sally, had a confirmation class, and Bishop Myers came and confirmed our children, and that was a wonderful occasion in the 70s. Bob Sue came in the 70s, and he was our rector for, I don't know how many years, but quite a few years. He had 2 little girls as well, so that was a connection. And we really enjoyed him. He was the most joyful man I've ever met. He had a laugh that rang out over the whole premises, and when he would laugh, everyone else laughed too. One time we had a folk mass, and we were singing Lord of the Dance, and Bob Sue came in and danced around the church, and everyone loved it. This goes on and off. Sounds like I'm sorry. Oh, and also, he liked to come to the family potlucks, the Holy Spirit potlucks, where you could bring anything you wanted to share. And he said, I come to get my just desserts. He loved puns. We had a campaign called Pillars to Post. We all gave money to buy the church, which was actually owned by the diocese, and we wanted to be a regular parish. So we dedicated money to all the pillars in the church, and if you go around, you can see that there are plaques on them commemorating that. It was wonderful. We bought the church and celebrated that we were truly a parish, and we owned our own church. Okay. Well, I guess that's all I want to say. Gary's going to tell the rest about the 70s. But I've just loved being a member of this church. And I know all of you feel the same way. It's wonderful. And all of you are such caring, wonderful people. Thank you.
Oh, you're coming to the podium. Okay. You can do it from there if you want. Oh, you're good, yeah.
Dawn, I too have been blessed and lucky to be here. I'm going to talk about the 70s. I'm going to talk about a particular aspect of it, but before I do that, I'll tell you that my practice of medicine was always delightful. I had the most wonderful partner, but he was very irreverent toward our fellow colleagues. And at the various meetings we go to, he would insist that I sit next to him. And I'd say, no, Norman, I don't want to sit next to you. Yes, you do. And I tried to get away from him. I couldn't do it because he was always cracking jokes while this person was giving a very erudite talk on some topic. So he knew which ear was my good ear. I can't hear out of this ear, but he always wanted to sit on my right. And just a second. And then I have followed Wynn's lead on churches. I had been brought up in a Presbyterian church in San Jose, which was more like a bastion of Christianity than one like this. It was a big building and fairly sturdy. But Wynn found this one, and I knew, okay, I'll go along with what Wynn says. And I always go along with what Wynn said. In the 70s, there were a couple of things going on. One was the Vietnam War, and the other was development of the youth group here. In the Vietnam War, I did get a draft notice, and I asked Wynn, what should I do? She says, you're going to go because they called you. So I went to Grace Cathedral thinking there'll be somebody there that can tell me what to do. And someone did come down to talk to me. It was around lunchtime. And he listened, and he said, you got to go. So I did go in the service, but I got the draft notice from the Army, and I didn't want to go in the Army, so I volunteered to go in the Air Force. And I had 2 very successful years in the Air Force, and I did not have to go to Vietnam. I missed it by about 1 month. So that's one thing that was pretty lucky for me. In the 70s, the youth group at this church started to develop some cohesiveness because the young people were getting at the age just go to high school, and our daughters, and behind all this, a very solid member of the youth group was Bruce O'Neill, and his mother, Mrs. Inga O'Neill, was the very first youth group leader. And then because most of the people, the youth, were interested in track and field, including Bruce, who was a very good runner. One of the coaches, Bruce McClish, was also youth leader in churches, and he took over the youth group here, as well as Moraga Valley Presbyterian Church. And that's when I think the youth group was as strong as it ever was. He had a good ear for listening to the problems that young people have, and he was very good. At that time also, there was a lot of work to do in this church. For instance, painting, washing windows, cleaning up, and Bernard Kalki was sort of in charge of painting, and I came in to help him. I said, hi, I came to help you paint. And he says, you know how to paint? I said, yeah, sure. And he wanted me to show him that I knew it was the bristle part that goes in the paint and not the handle. and then I passed that one. George Wasson had a magic formula for cleaning these windows. The parish hall was smaller, but it had windows on the side. And he wouldn't tell anybody what it was, but someone actually caught him refilling the bucket, and it was just water with a couple of drops of soap in it. But he said it was the way he put it in and how he mixed it. The youth group developed a very strong presence with Bruce O'Neill, very instrumental in the youth group. And word got out that this was a good place to come if you were a young person. And so the Moraga Valley Presbyterian Church became friends with our youth and some from Miramani, primarily, again, because they were all track runners. And there were combined dances and decorating parties. There was a lot going on, and Wynn and I were frequently asked to be chaperones. I don't know why, but we were. So I had two tools of the trade that I carried with me. One was a ruler to make sure nobody got too close in their dancing. The other was a very big flashlight so I could see into the corners, the dark corners. There never was a problem.
Thank you so much, Wynn and Gary. Beautiful stories. And now we're back in the time machine, and here comes the 1980s.
Think of somebody with brown hair. Well, when Will asked me to do this, he didn't say it was about St. Anselms. What? He just said, speak about the 80s. And I must confess to feeling just a little bit impish, because it really did bring back a thought, an idea, something that happened to me when I was down as rector in Hollister. We used to have a Good Friday service, and with ecumenical service in the afternoon with 4, 5, 6, or 7 of us all together. And one Good Friday, we were at the Methodist Church with 6 or 7 ministers set to each say their piece, and we had agreed upon, very thoroughly agreed upon, 5 minutes each. Well, there was the elder statesman of the bunch, who was the Lutheran minister at the time, and he got up to speak. I think he was third. 45 minutes later. So, 2 minutes. Just to put things in context, in the beginning of the 1980s, Ronald Reagan was president. He instilled Star Wars, which it led to the ultimate bankruptcy of the USSR, which brought them down. Ultimately, at the end of the Berlin Wall fell at the end of the decades. In the church, we were just beginning to live into the 1979 prayer book with all of what that brought. That revision, huge theological emphasis change. I mean, some of you all remember going from 28 to 79. I'm sure many of the people here do. And the emphasis went in the church from the fall of humanity to the wonderful magnificence of creation. And then the emphasis also went from the idea that people had to be redeemed, even though we do, but the emphasis went from that to the, again, magnificence of the incarnation. And so that shift, it wasn't just how we worshiped it, it was the emphasis that was there. Things went from being negative to being positive in terms of the emphasis. And so we also went from being primarily morning prayer every Sunday morning to a Eucharistic-based worshiping community. Very, very big. And that translates really, in some ways, from being an emphasis on Protestant to an emphasis on small c Catholic. That's what it did. The other thing that happened in the beginning of the 80s is had a lot of women graduating from seminary all of a sudden. And my seminary class was half women. I graduated in '84. Half women. And they were being ordained with nowhere to go. So you could get ordained, but good luck finding a job. It was really a tough time. When I got to St. Anselms, I was very fortunate to be called here in the mid-'80s. And when I got here, Diocese of California was in crisis over AIDS. AIDS was huge here. And the AIDS crisis dropped right in the middle of, especially, it hit San Francisco a little harder than it did the communities out here as communities. But it was there, and it brought with it a controversy about the common cup. Isn't it funny how what goes around comes around? There. Now, the community here at St. Anselms, as I experienced it, and coming in as your curate, I came in as a deacon, a transitional deacon, and 6 months into that, I was ordained here in this congregation in that sanctuary. And this past January, because I got my arm twisted by the rector, we had a big celebration of my 40th ordination anniversary. And I have to confess, and I will confess loudly, I am not a fan of churches in the round. I come from a different background, and so they're wonderful to celebrate in. And when I am the celebrant, I love it. As a worshiping member, I find it very, very difficult. So it was always a challenge for me being here. Although when I was here, I was usually celebrating. When I was here as curate, and then a little bit later on as interim. In the middle of all of that, Bob Sue, this community was very, very stable. It wasn't really affected as a community, it wasn't affected much by what was going on in the outside world. It was almost like a time capsule in here. Individually, I suspect there was a lot more going on, but because I was so new and so young, and because Bob Sue had been here so long, and because he was such a consummate pastor, my Lord, that man was amazing as a pastor. If people were having individual issues around women's ordination or the prayer book or had family members or people affected by AIDS, he was the one who knew that and carried that. And it didn't spill to the entire congregation. It just never did. And I was here such a short period of time, I didn't get that kind of depth of connection with all of you. However, as much difficulty as I had with the building, it was quite the opposite with the people, with the community here. The people in this community are incredible. And as someone who has served congregations in several different places over the years and time, I can tell you, you are amazing in your warmth, in your welcoming, in in the amount of individual outreach that each one of you does without ever saying a word about it, it's the heart and soul, and you use this place to propel you out, and you always have, as well as using it to bring people in and being welcoming. And so I want to toast you with my Pepsi. Thank God for you. May God bless you. May He continue to keep you and us together and lead us into the next chapter of St. Anselms with grace and joy and contentment. Hear, hear.
All right, back in the time machine, and I should have put the very Reverend Bruce O'Neill, my apologies, my great colleague who you heard a little bit about already. Go ahead, Bruce.
I'm in a time warp. I'm listed as the 1990s. I actually left St. Anselms the fall of 1990 to go to Virginia Seminary. And it's funny that Joan mentions the 28 Prayer Book. I just came from presiding at 1928 Prayer Book morning prayer service. I bring you greetings and congratulations from St. Clement's in Berkeley, where I serve. I was baptized March 25th, 1967 by George Hunt, right in there. Confirmed by Bishop Myers about 11 or 12 years later. Sponsored for ordination. I was working with the youth group here and on the vestry, and Charles Ramsden, who was the rector at the time, this was his second time at St. Anselms, I get confused. He was a seminarian with Jim Jones in the early 1970s. So when Charles Ramsden was rector, he came into San Francisco where I was working, and we had lunch, and he closed my office door and he said, "You need to go to seminary." So I have cursed him many times since then. Give thanks for the great people of St. Anselms. My mother was the first to buy a niche in the columbarium. Our son Jeremy, who is associate rector at Church of the Redeemer in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, was one of the first preschool students here. So we've got generations. And just briefly, this caring community was absolutely amazing in my mother's final years. She got visits weekly from lay people and from John Sutton and from the interim people. So thank you, and congratulations on 65 years, and I hope you're not retiring anytime soon.
All right, John Sutton, now I know you said 2 minutes was going to be too short, and that's okay. You already saw people break the rules around here.
Well, hello. It's great to be back, and I just wanted to thank the bishop for being here. You've got a very busy schedule. Thank you for being here to celebrate. Great to hear Tim and Jane. We had all the former, I think there they are, all the former rectors. The one who I had never met was your dad, and this guy who looked like he was the wonderful young priest from Central Casting. I always wondered who that guy was, so thank you for sharing. Gary, the youth group, I think in the 70s, I'm not sure on the timing, but when I was over at St. Paul's in Walnut Creek, the story was there was a youth group director who wanted to grow the youth group and thought marijuana would be a good way to do it. So maybe it was shortly thereafter that St. Anselm's youth group grew. I know once it was out, St. Paul's diminished at that point. But in any case, for those of you who are either visiting or new, I'm John Sutton. I was the rector here from 1998 to my retirement 4 years ago. And everything everybody has said about what a wonderful place this is, that was my experience. The church grounds look somewhat different than when I first got here. And I do want to highlight some of the people that had to do with those changes. So when I first got here very first interaction at St. Anselms was in a conference room, or actually this parish hall, with the search committee, and there was this fellow walking around outside, kind of an absent-minded professor-looking guy, and he was just, Saturday he was walking all around and he was here. Well, that was Gordon Rep, and Gordon, every rector needs a Gordon Rep. Gordon at that time was a guy that would do anything around the church and knew how to do anything. So this whole section was bramble. In fact, this part of the parish hall we didn't have. It was weeds and bramble. So when we wanted to build a parish hall, when we wanted to put in a preschool, Gordon gets out there and he puts in rebar, he bends it, he puts concrete in, he does all of this, and you didn't pay him anything. He just did it because, oh, that sounds like a fun project. And then after Gordon, there came along Doug Merrill. Gordon couldn't do it forever, and that columbarium over there is largely because Doug Merrill took the lead and putting it in and organizing it, and Doug was out here watering for years and years and years, and he was the de facto sexton after Gordon. After Doug started to have some health issues, that guy down at the end of the table, that's you, Chris. He was the guy at the end of my ministry that was the go-to guy. And Chris got us through COVID. He was there recording the sessions the whole time, never had to worry. Chris was as reliable as the day is long. So you can thank a lot of people, but those are three people in particular that had a lot to do with the building of this new parish hall and the columbarium and the preschool. Now, when we're talking about the preschool, there are a couple people that need to be noted about that as well. One is Jane Ord, who had a vision for it, and she was instrumental for years in Christian education, children's education. Amy O'Rear took a big leadership role for years, and then Kim Olson, the director we found, did a fantastic job. But the one throughput through the whole thing was Peg Matson, who was there just advocating for the preschool the whole way, and she did just a fantastic job, and it's still the love of her ministry, among others, and she's been just so helpful in building that ministry. The beauty in that sanctuary we can thank to Marcia Ellicott and Sarah Swimmer right over there. Those banners, the floors, the cushion design. We have two interior designers in this parish that use their skills. And I remember having a conversation with you, Sarah, when we were building the parish hall. We were tight on the budget. And Sarah said, you know, for another $30,000, you could take the roofs up and make it a totally different sanctuary. It was like, I trust Sarah. $30,000 is a lot of money, but boy, were you right. Because this parish hall is so much better because of the high ceilings. Programs, there are a number of programs that we have here to this day that we need to thank people for their leadership. The Stephen Ministry Program, which Vicki Pappas is still leading. Grief Support, which Naomi is leading, as well as the Christian Education Program. Cancer Support, Julie Rinkenberger, all of those programs. In a church this size, you're looking for where is God calling us? And when we had critical mass, we formed these ministries. And there were always people willing to step up and take charge. Marty Fisher with Trinity Center and St. Anselm's early involvement and Marty's throughput on the whole thing. One of probably the most meaningful ministries of the Episcopal Church in Contra Costa County is Trinity Center out of St. Paul's, Walnut Creek. And we were instrumental in helping that ministry grow. And Marty, you did amazing things in the process of that. We've heard about Jim Pike. I do have one story I want to tell in the event anybody didn't hear it. But as the story goes, there was no church. Of course, we were a mission when we first started. And Bishop Pike went to a Sunday service at St. Stephen's, Orinda, and he went to a Sunday service at St. Paul's, Walnut Creek, and collected all the people who lived in Lafayette from those two churches. And he said, You are now founding members of the mission of St. Anselms Lafayette. People had opinions about Bishop Pike. And in those days, when Bishop Pike said do it, you did it. And thank God that they all went along with it, because we're here today because of it. He was an iconoclast. I mean, I think if you're talking about influential members of the Episcopal Church clergy over the course of time, he's way up at the top. He was on the cover of Time magazine. I mean, he was really a remarkable man. So it's, in my mind, it's very appropriate that we're here on Stewardship Sunday, because in the sanctuary we gave of our treasure. By the way, Julie, what you do, the Cancer Support Group, is fantastic, and I want to acknowledge you for that as well. Time, talent, and treasure, we've all heard that, and we gave of our treasure in the sanctuary. The time and the talent piece of it is something that people at St. Anselms have been doing for years and years and years. Gordon Rep, when we had the old tile in there, you know, we had to move them to strip the tiles, they were dirty. He says, oh, I have my trigonometry tables, I can build some levers. And did you take trig? I never thought you'd use it. You know, he used it. But there are people like that doing all sorts of things in this church. I mean, what Naomi does in her steadiness at the altar, just bringing the needs of the world to the church, bringing the church to the, needs of the world to the church to the needs of the world. You do that in your life. They're not here anymore, but we were all blessed by the music ministry of Andrew and Carolyn Hutter. They were some of the most giving people, the most dutiful. I never had a problem with my music director. I don't know how many rectors can say that, but we have always had these people of great, great spirit. And so I'd like to raise my glass to all of you, and under the able leadership of Will, you're going to continue to be growing in that way. Cheers.
Thank you so much, John. And when I first started at St. Anselms and I heard there had been a rector for 23 years, I was like, what? How could somebody be in a place for that long? And now that I've gotten to know this place and I'm here, I'm like, maybe I get it. I get it. So thank you, John, for all you've done for this parish, all you continue to do, and thanks for being available whenever I'm like, who is this and what am I supposed to do? Very helpful. All right, I want to invite our bishop up to give a brief address on the vision of our diocese. But before I do, I want to also thank our band for being here. So just get ready. Give our bishop a little bit of moment to speak. But we're really glad you're here. Be humble. Go ahead.
You know, they told me that there would be a lot of scary moments you faced as a bishop, but I don't know if there's anything worse than being right before dessert. So I just want to say briefly what a gift it's been to be with you today. Kids, I'm not sure if you're listening as intently as I am. I'm relatively new to this diocese and new to this church, and so getting to hear about that history was really inspiring to me, to hear all the ways in which God has worked in this place throughout these 65 years. And to all the different people. It is a testament to God's faithfulness and also your willingness to say yes to God. And so thank you for that. Y'all know, I think, how many know that your wonderful rector and I were engaged in the strategic visioning process together on the strategic visioning committee? Awesome. He was an amazing gift to us and was able, yes, absolutely. We spent the last 18 months together. That is from beginning stages of listening processes to going through all the different 5 parts of the social discernment cycle, which we really wanted to discern this vision together, as opposed to me saying, here's our vision for the diocese. And so that process happened, and it took a long time. It wasn't 100% smooth sailing. Turns out we in the Diocese of California have some work to do in terms of being in better relationship with one another. But I've seen over that amount of time that God's doing a new thing here that's very encouraging. So I thought it'd be worthwhile sharing with you not the entire strategic plan, which is 100 and something pages. But I think it's important for you to know the tagline so that you can refer to it easily, which is rooted in Christ, bearing fruit for the healing of the world. For me, this is like the heart of what we're engaged in. Everything flows from understanding ourselves to be rooted in Jesus Christ. And being disciples of Jesus and helping form disciples of Jesus is really what we're all about. That's what every single member of our diocese can be about, both on an individual level and on a church-wide level. Our vision, it actually, simply stated, is a growing church, alive and transformed in Christ, serving a diverse and interconnected Bay Area and a wider world. The understanding is that we are called to grow, as all living organisms are called to grow. And that our growth is not for our own sake alone, but for the sake of the wider world that Jesus loves so much and asks us to serve in his name. So our purpose, which is a mission statement, is to follow Jesus as a community. That's really important. We can all individually follow Jesus, but it's different to try to do it so as a community. That embodies God's justice, love, and mercy for all, and to equip our congregations, our institutions, and our leaders with the support and resources to effectively pursue our vision in partnership with the communities we serve. It's so important. A congregation has the opportunity to be able to be a light to the entire area in which it is planted. And I've heard ample examples over the last 65 years of the ways in which St. Anselms has been that light. Right now, the call to this community is, how are you going to do that now? How are you going to get to know your neighbors in this place, especially neighbors who maybe have an idea about what church is, and that's not what this church is. People who have been hurt by the church, people who think that the church stands for keeping people out instead of drawing wider circles. This is a witness that you have to offer in this place. And you don't do so alone. You do that as one of the member churches of the Diocese of California, other 71 churches. So this is an opportunity you have to live into this particular vision, and I can't encourage you enough to do so. As your bishop, my responsibility is to make sure that you understand the needs of our body and other parts that are struggling, and then parts that are also really doing amazing ministry. So some of the things that you do here that are amazing, that are giving you life, we want to make sure that other parts of our body know about that, not only within the Diocese of California, but also wider as well. We have 3 years to do this work, and I encourage you, if you're really, really interested, actually I encourage you to do it anyway, just because it's worthwhile. But if you're interested, take a look at the different focus areas where we're expecting to make progress over the next 3 years. Those focus areas are Christian formation and leadership development, congregational development, mission congregations, finances, multicultural and multilingual ministries, repair and healing, and sharing, experiencing and embodying the love of Jesus beyond our doors. You know, one of my great gifts today was getting to receive communion from Deacon Naomi, and she's just been a wonderful witness to what it means to embody that love of Jesus beyond our church doors in so many ways to me. Deacons are leaders that help us, as John so wonderfully said, like both see the needs of the world expressed in the church and also the needs of the church expressed in the world. And connecting those two spheres is such an important aspect. And so I just want to say thank you for your ministry. Thank you for your witness. And I hope that all of us, regardless of whether we are ordained or not, understand that we are called to be part of the priesthood of all believers through our baptism. And I hope that you will exercise your baptism and the call that we all share in it, but together as a community. That's one of the most countercultural things we can do in this world right now. And so I encourage you to go deep in your roots and to draw deeply from the living water that is Christ, and to bear fruit for this next 65 years you have ahead of you. I'm thankful for the fruit that's already been born in this place of the 65 years that we're celebrating right now. Thanks for this time.
One more quick note before the band starts up. Just one more second. I have some very exciting good news from John Powers, who's been helping us with a special campaign to help us with the next 65 years.
I have two pieces of good news. First, I had no idea I was going to be doing this until this morning, so this will only take a minute. The second piece of good news is if you all look on the back of the card that's in front of you, there's some information about the St. Anselms Lafayette Endowment. I was so grateful to hear Reverend Tracy's challenge today to all of us to imagine what we can be for the next 65 years, because that's exactly what Reverend Will challenged us to do when he became our rector. Now, we've heard Reverend Will characterize himself as a church nerd, so he does more than just open file cabinets. He looks around at other churches and has noticed that some of the most successful, impactful, long-lasting churches have endowments. And so he said, why don't we try that here? And the vestry took him up on that, put aside $32,500 to start the St. Anselms Lafayette Endowment. That's for the long-term benefit of the church, not for next week's utility bill, but for the next 65 years. I'm pleased to announce today that some generous donors, 7 or 8 over the last few months, have matched that amount, and we're now over $65,000 invested for the future.